106 of my Dolls House Diary. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be revisiting my first ever miniatures project, and it's a 1/12 scale bistro, which I actually built, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, 28 years ago. So it's actually sitting on top of that bookcase at the moment, so I'm going to get it down. I'm looking forward to showing it to you and telling you its story. But whilst I've got it down, because I haven't opened it for quite a while, I'm going to give it a bit of a clean, and I know that there's a little bit that's broken off on the front and the sign is no longer hanging. So I also want to give it a little bit of a spruce up at the same time. Okay, so let me get it down. So I want to be really careful. It's actually quite heavy, heavier than I remember. Okay. Ooh. So here it is, Le Bistro. And as you can see, it's not in too bad a condition. I do need to make a few little repairs, and there is some wear and tear to it, which is understandable after 28 years. But I just sort of want to show you around, starting on the outside. So if we come to this side first, if you see where the paper there is torn, and you can see some marks on there as well, which are glue marks. And I did used to have some ivy going up the walls on there, but it was actually quite heavy and never stuck very well, so in the end I removed it, and I don't think I've actually got that anymore, so I need to sort of clean that wall up a little bit. And then here the top of the door actually broke, so that snapped off, but this is actually quite wide. I was thinking even of perhaps replacing it with something that didn't sort of protrude so much. But I think it is going to be easier just to sort of glue that back into place. So I need to do that as well. And then here where you can see this glue mark, I did used to have a hanging bracket with a little sign on it. And the bracket isn't actually broken, they just sort of slot back together. So I'll have to have a look at that as well. And then the acetate in the window is loose, and it's just actually being held in by the cafe curtain rod. So it's quite safe in there, but it would be good to sort of reattach it. So yeah, apart from that, just needs a good dust. So I'm actually going to use my soft brush to do that. I'll just start along the back of the roof as well. So the back of the roof is the fixed part. I don't know if you can see on camera that dust coming off. With a little wet cloth as well, I think. Some of that's not brushing off. Okay, so let's have a look inside. So the door opens like that, and then this front part of the roof comes off, and oh dear, it's worse on the inside than I actually thought it would be. So as you can see, it's very dusty in there. A lot of things have fallen over, and I just noticed as well that the little light has come off the wall there. That was actually above the chalkboard. So that will need to be reattached. There should be lids to all of those copper pots along the top of the dresser there. The drawers have all fallen open. That's obviously where I've sort of been lifting it up and down off the top of the bookcase. Floor's quite dirty. There's the little hanging sign that I made. Not quite sure how I actually hung that up now. Oh, there are a couple of holes in the corners. So I can actually reattach that. I'll clean that up and then reattach it. Little glass there is broken, but it may have broken in the past because I think I can see a little blob of glue on the stem there. There's things fallen over underneath. Just lots of dust. No spiders, I hope. I can't see any at the moment. So what I want to do is take everything out, give it all a really good clean, make any repairs necessary, and then put everything back in and display it nicely. But one thing that really strikes me is how differently I did things 28 years ago. And the most obvious thing being that now I make everything myself. I only ever buy something if it's something that I can't make, or I can't make as well as the actual bought item. But yes, all of this is bought, apart from obviously, the little tablecloths, the serviettes, the placemats, the little menus, the chalkboard up there. But yes, everything else was just bought and displayed. I also made the little cafe curtain here. Quite a few cobwebs on there, so there must have been spiders in here at some point. You can see there how sort of dusty it is. And I think as well that's why it's important to go back to some of your older projects, even if perhaps they're not 28 years old, but even sort of every few years, especially if it's something like this that you don't open up very often. I think it's a really good idea just to have a peep inside to see what's going on, especially if you live somewhere where you might suffer from damp in the house. It's just a really good idea to, like I say, have a look around, see what's happening, and give them a little bit of a spruce up and just really enjoy them again. And I am actually going to enjoy giving this a clean and putting it all back together. Before I do that, what I actually want to do is just give you a little bit of the history of this piece. So I actually built it for a Dolls House Emporium competition that I was entering. And the idea of the competition was that you bought this building, which came as a kit. You built the kit and then turned it into whatever you wanted. And I think the top prize at the time was about £100 worth of vouchers to spend in the catalogue. It would have been then, I think. I'm not even sure if they had a website then. And then I think £50 and then £25. And everybody who entered got a £5 voucher. And like I say, I didn't win, but it didn't really bother me at the time because I just remember loving building this so much. And really, this is what made me want to carry on with miniatures. And the inspiration, I remember, for sort of turning it into a bistro with this lovely green colour was the British comedy called Robin's Nest. And it was a spin-off from a 70s comedy called Man About the House. So they made Robin's Nest and they also made George and Mildred. So all of the characters from Man About the House, which I think was remade in the US as Three's Company. They got their own series. So there was George and Mildred, which were the older couple, and then Robin, which was the man who lived with the two girls in the house. He remarried and set up his own bistro in South London and called it Robin's Nest. And I was watching that at the time and I thought I'd like to do a little bistro. And they had the kitchen at the back, and that's why I put that false door in at the back. And I think in every episode somebody was sort of dashing through that door. It was swinging back and forth. Okay, so I'm really looking forward now to getting on with the cleaning of this. But just to say, let me know in the comment section below, what was your first project. Tell me the story about it. Even if it was just a piece that you made, a piece of furniture or a tiny miniature, or whether it was something bigger, perhaps you started off with a doll's house. Tell me in the comments your sort of first project story. I'd love to hear. Okay, so I'm going to start, as I said, by emptying everything out. Let's begin with those. So all of my china pieces are actually attached. So I'm going to use this smaller soft brush just to give them all a clean and between the pieces as well. And the lids on all of these are actually loose. That has come unstuck over the years, like this little pot here, this little tureen, I'm going to be using these sticker points to attach them back into place. And these are permanent adhesive dots, so you get them on a sheet like this that you separate. Let me show you. So you get a few sheets like that, and they're perforated, and if you can see in there, you've got like a circle of glue. I'm not sure if you can actually see that on camera, but the circles of glue are quite large, but you can just sort of snip them and just snip a tiny little bit off. So I'm actually going to snip that in half again, and then you just remove the back in and you take out the little blob of glue. Like that. I'll actually need that tiny little bit there. Static in a bit of paper there. I'm just going to pop that on the bottom there, like that, and then just pop that back into place there, like that. So let's dust these other bits off as well, then we'll move over to the other side. And for that push plate there on the door, I actually just cut a piece of gold vinyl. So as you saw there, that plant was actually loose in that larger pot. So what I'm going to do is just put one of the sticker dots or sticker points on the bottom, and that will then just hold it in the pot. And I actually sell these in my Etsy shop if it's something you're interested in. Pop that on there like that, and then press that into the pot. And then I won't have to worry about that falling out when I lift it down again. So what I actually think I'm going to do here is just pop this piece of acetate out, like that, and then I can give it a clean and then reattach it. So I'll pop that to one side, and then I'll just dust the window frame off inside and out. find that you're dusting but the dust just isn't removing, then you may just need a little bit of water. So I've got here just some plain water, there's no cleaning solution or anything in there, and a piece of kitchen towel. So I'm just going to very lightly wet the wood and clean that off, but you don't want to drench it. Going to use a little bit of water for the floor inside, and obviously this is paper, so I don't want to drench it, so I really am just going to get a little bit of water on the tissue there and just sort of gently wipe. And I don't mind, you know, the tiles having a little bit of wear and tear on them. It just sort of adds to the realism. But I just wanted to get any sort of dust off, sort of sticky dust. Okay, I don't think I'm going to get it any better than that, so I'll leave it there. This is actually very, very thin paper. And if I put any more water on it, I'll just start tearing it, which I don't want to do. So we'll leave it there. So because in those days there weren't LED sort of battery operated wall lights, or I certainly wasn't aware of them anyway, I did actually buy an electric picture light to go over the chalkboard and just cut the wires out. But that has now fallen off, so the sticky pad on the wall has obviously dried up and that just fell off. I'm going to try to reattach it with one of these sticker point glue patches, and let's see if that's strong enough. I think it will be, they're very strong. I'm actually just going to place that over the sticker pad that's on the wall there, rather than attach this directly to the wall. Like that. Let's just see if that will sit back on there. Yeah, that feels as though it's quite firmly in place. I'm just going to give it a press from the back as well. There. Okay, so let's start getting everything back in. So everything on the top here is fixed, and then underneath these are loose. Looks like I sat those onto, yes, a little bit of the dado rail underneath there, which I propped those up on so that you could just see them a little bit better. So we'll pop those back on there, and then these are loose as well. I don't mind having things that are loose. It's just if they were to fall and, you know, get damaged, that's when you have to think about attaching them. Is actually loose as well. A couple of little checks sticking out of the drawer there. little table with the broken glass, so it's just sort of snapped off at the stem there. And these aren't actually glass, it's acrylic, I think. But I think over the years I can remember pinching some of these glasses for other projects. So I'll need to find something to put back in these spaces here. But isn't that a lovely sort of little soda siphon there? Really nicely detailed little product there. And also, I thought that about, I'm just going to bring one of these tables back in, the little salt and pepper sort of cruet there. That's really lovely as well, isn't it? So I know that I got most of this from Dolls House Emporium, probably all of it actually. I'm not sure if they do those items anymore. Might have to have a look. So I've actually just used a tiny little bit of the sticker point glue to glue the top of the glass back onto the stem. Now it's not a very stable repair, so I will have to come back to that and find out my glue, my sort of two-part glue to do that. But for now I'm quite happy that that's going to stay there. So I'll pop that back in as well. Sort of picked up this bucket earlier and these metal straps just fell off. So let's see if we can just press those back on. That one as well. That's actually come apart, that one. That must be what happens just over the years. Glue gives way, you know, with the temperature and things like that, I suppose. I'm just seeing if I can sort of fold them back round and if they'll hold themselves there. If not, I'll just put a bit of glue under there. So I think that was on this side last time, and I'm actually going to put that over there. Just because that's the bulkier item, so it's better sort of pushed further back. And then I'll stand these back underneath. And I think I had tried to fix these loose bottles to the floor last time with tacky wax, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stand them in there, because if I ever want to sort of take it all out and clean it again, then they're not going to be attached to the floor. But I'll just have to be super careful when I'm sort of standing it back up on top of the bookcase. I just wish I had, you know, a larger place other than my craft room to display all of these, so that I could, you know, have them sort of a little bit more in the eye line all the time, rather than having to push things on a shelf. But I know, you know, I know I'm very lucky to have a dedicated craft room. Okay, we'll have those stood under there like that. And then there was a little barrel which was stood at the other side there. I'm questioning my choices of the items I chose now as well. I probably wouldn't have had a beer keg stood actually in the, you know, main part of the bistro. It does look quite nice there though. Okay, so now I want to tackle the tables and chairs. I'll just do one at a time. I'll just take everything off again and then just stand it all back on. Again, these are just stuck with tacky wax. They're loose. And then the actual cloth underneath is stuck to the table. I may have glued that, I don't know actually. Can't tell now. Don't really want to pull it off, so I'll just see if I can get this clean without taking it off. Although as I'm saying that, I think I might replace that. So let me just get my fabric box out and see if I've got another piece of this dark green.
So believe it or not, after 28 years, I have still got some of the original fabric in my fabric box. I've got quite a large piece actually, and that's probably because this isn't a colour that I would use in my bedding or anything like that, this sort of very dark green. So what I'm going to do is just very carefully remove this top layer. I can see now how I fixed it. So this is fixed with tacky wax, and then that was just fixed around the table with an elastic band which has just crumbled. I quite like the idea of that though, so I might just find out another elastic band and put another one around. I mean, obviously after all this time it's actually kept its shape. And then I've cut another piece here, 4 inches square, and what I'm going to do, rather than worry about getting the straight edges or hemming them or anything, I'm just going to make some little frayed edges, and you can do that just by pulling at the, you know, the threads in the fabric, but don't pull too many, don't try and do it all at once, just pull a couple of threads at a time, otherwise you'll just end up tearing the fabric or ruffling it like that. Okay, so I've created a nice sort of frayed edge around there. Thinking about it, I'm not going to put the elastic band back on because I've made this slightly smaller, which I think looks better, and then obviously you'll be able to see the band. So I'll just hope now that that will stay nicely draped around there. But as I've sort of been trying this into place, I thought that table didn't used to wobble. When I've looked, the leg has actually come off. So I'm going to glue that back into place now as well. And I'll check the legs on the other one as well. A bit of glue. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue into the actual hole there. And then onto that patch of bare wood. Just put that back into place. Give it a press. Press and hold. Who would have thought when I was doing this 28 years ago that would become one of my catchphrases. They actually seem solid enough, but whilst that's drying, what I'm going to do is just have a look at the other table as well. Dress the tables again, and I've actually just been through my box of miniatures and found out some of the bits that I originally used in this room, and then very naughtily over the years I've sort of pinched pieces to use in other displays, but now I'm going to put them back and I'm going to make a vow not to pinch anything out of here in the future. So I found the little candle bottle there, and I melted real candle wax down that to make it look like that, and I was really pleased with myself for thinking of that. I can remember some of these things that I did all those years ago. And then I can't find those pink flowers that I had on this table now, so I found some paler pink ones. They're a bit shorter, but I think they actually look nicer, so I'll trim these ones down, and I think the sort of 2 different shades of pink will look quite nice. So that's for the first table over there. And then what I'm actually going to do with the placemats is just turn them over so they faded a little bit on the original side. And I just actually had a practice as well of how the chairs fit back in, because I want the chairs to be able to sit in the sort of triangle of the legs there. So that will go like that and that over this side, and that's the sort of smallest combination, so I'll obviously then dress to those areas like that. Well, I'll have to sort of dress obviously along the edge of the table like that, but that's where they will be. So I'll get those chairs out of the way. They're very dirty actually, the chairs. I actually think there's a little bit of mould on the bottom, so we'll clean that off. So that one there like that. Turn that one over. Had a little menu there, which we'll put there. And then the little cruet set, which I really like. Pop that on there. And the flowers. And some of these have still got little bits of tacky wax on the bottom from other projects. That's what I'm using to attach them. And we've got the serviettes. Let's move that back a little bit. And then I found out some more wine glasses, which I think were originally on the table. And we've got the candle. We have, let's have it in front of the menu actually. I think that was it. I'm just thinking, because I might even have some cutlery somewhere. But I'll dress the other table for now and then I'll see what else I've got. Okay, so both tables are now dressed and I actually found some cutlery as well in my box of accessories. So I'm just going to pop these back in for now. Just sort of stand them in there like that. And then I want to clean up the chairs. And looking at these chairs, I actually think this is mould growing on the bottom there, or on the rung there. And that's why it is a really good idea to revisit your projects every so often. Like I say, especially where you've got closed in fronts and you don't know what's going on the inside. So I'm actually going to use my water just to clean this off, and then I'll give the backs of the chairs a dust. Okay, the chairs are now clean again, so let's get those back in. And it is a bit of a tight squeeze. I can't actually see if I'm around the leg there or not. I'm going to have the other one there. Actually, I wonder if I can. No, because then I don't think I can get the other one in. And this one at the front here. Oops, that's the tablecloth moving there. Yeah, I was going to just put those aside like that. Actually, I'll angle that one slightly as well, just so they match. Okay, so the inside now is looking so much better. I also found out a couple of little brandy glasses that I'd pinched from in here as well, so I've popped those back on there. Some of these pieces are falling forwards. I think it's because it's so warm in here today and the sort of original tacky wax is just melting away.
Just looks so much brighter and cleaner. And back to how it would have looked when I originally did it. Yeah, really like that. So I've just got the little doormat to go back down there. And the flowers to go back on the window ledge. So I'll give those a dust as well. Okay, so I'm going to close this up now and we'll have a look at the outside. So I've got the piece of window acetate here, and what I'm actually going to do is give that a clean and then just slot it back in. And I'm just thinking that then it will be easier to keep clean rather than having to clean between the panes. And it sits quite nicely in there. You would only know it was loose if I told you, really. I suppose, which I have done, but don't tell anyone else. So I've got this glass cleaner here, which Matt promises me is a really good one. So let's give it a go. Okay, so I'm going to slot that back in from the inside. And all that's left on there is actually the glue from where it was originally stuck into place. There. And then what I've also done here is just mix up some acrylic paint just to go over that little bit of torn paper. And I'm just actually going to dab it on and leave that bit of grouting in there on water. It's not actually exact colour-wise. I just think it will hide that torn bit of paper. A bit better, doesn't it? So my next job is to glue the door porch back together. And I do think it is a little bit wide, and the reason it's broken is because the bracket only comes to the edge of the wood there. So after that, the wood is quite weak. And had I have known what I know now, I would have probably made that smaller before I actually glued it into place. But I may still do that in the future, but what I'll do for now is just glue this back into place and put a bit of masking tape across. But I think it would look a little bit nicer if it wasn't so sort of wide as well. It's a nice clean break there. There's nothing missing, no splinters or anything. I'm just going to give that a bit of a press. I've got a piece of masking tape here just to put across the top. And I think I'll just pop a piece underneath as well, just for a bit of extra strength. So I also want to get the bracket and sign back into place. So what I'm actually going to do with the bracket is use a couple of pins to hold that into place. So I'm just going to put it back there, covering up the glue line there. And just make a couple of little pencil marks in there. And then drill, but without going in too far so that I don't come through the other side there.
I'm then going to glue it into place and then push a couple of pins in. So I'm using these sort of shorter pins or little tacks, and I'm just going to push them in with my pliers. So these aren't acting like screws, they're not actually holding it in that way, but it will be settling on them so that the pins are sort of holding it up. And I checked first that they're shorter than the actual thickness of the wood there, otherwise you'll pierce through. So do always check that first, just by sort of holding it alongside like that. And just making sure that it doesn't, you know, go over at the side. Bottom one as well. Pop the bracket in. So I've just used a double strand of black thread there, knotted on this side of the sign, and I'm just going to hang that into place. Looks good, doesn't it? And there we are, my first ever miniature project, back to looking how it did 28 years ago. And I'm so pleased that I've worked on this today. It has actually taken me all day, but it feels really good to have done that. And it was actually quite nice to revisit it, because I could remember buying the miniatures and putting them in and trying them into place, and that feeling of, you know, how nice it looked when I'd done it and how pleased I was with it. And like I said earlier, so much has changed now. I would have done this so differently if I was doing it today. But I still love it. I still really love how it looks. I've enjoyed spending time with it again today. And so pleased that it's back to how it was and without all of those pieces broken off and dangling and looking dusty. So I'm going to put this back up on the top of the bookcase, but I shall be extra careful with it. But I will take time every so often just to open the door and have a look inside and make sure that everything's okay and no spiders or anything have moved in. Okay, so that's it for today's episode, and I really hope you've enjoyed this one and this trip down memory lane with me. I've really loved spending time with this project again, and like I said earlier, it just feels so good now that it's all nice and clean, put back together on the inside, and that I've mended these pieces on the outside as well. So I'll be putting this back up on top of the bookcase, but I will sort of pop in a little bit more often from now on. Now, a couple of things I want to say as well before I go, and the first is that just temporarily this Dolls House Diary episode will be moving to every other Friday. Now, you know that I missed last week, and it was just because I didn't have time to spend on my own projects. So whilst I'm working on book 6, which I'm desperately trying to get out this year, I'm not going to have time to work on my Doll's House every week, but hopefully I will be able to work on it every other week and bring you those sort of fortnightly episodes from now on. But once the book is out, hopefully I'll be able to go back to weekly episodes. Now, the other thing I want to say, well, I want to ask you a favour really, and that is that if you don't know about my Happy Moments channel, and that's my sort of personal YouTube channel where you can find out what I do when I'm not working on my dolls' houses and miniatures, and it's called Happy Moments with Julie, and I would love it if you would head over there and subscribe and have a look around as well, because I've been doing a weekly vlog over there since the beginning of the year, and it's been probably almost weekly since the beginning of the year, so there are quite a few episodes there now, and it's just things I get up to in my spare time really. So a bit of gardening, there are some shopping hauls on there, some clothing try-ons, other things that I do around the house, some decorating, and like I say, everything else that I enjoy outside of my dolls' houses and miniatures work. So I would really love it if you'd go over there, take a look around and subscribe if you like what you see. So do let me know in the comments section below what your first miniature project was and how long ago it was as well. Let me know how long you've been in love with dolls' houses and miniatures. And I look forward to reading your comments. So that's it for today. I'll let you go now because I'm sure this has been a long one. I'll go and edit it now so that it's ready for Friday afternoon. And then I'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. So until then, take care. Bye.